Welcome back to the Work of Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Amy Green, your host from The Wellness Strategy, and we're here to talk about all things personal and professional wellbeing. This podcast is designed to help you become curious and consider your everyday wellbeing strategies, what you do for your own wellness, and how you can start to transform your life both in and out of the workplace. Sit back, grab a cup of tea, maybe grab a notepad, a journal, and get ready to feel really enlightened about what wellbeing used to be, what it is now, and where you can take your own wellness strategy. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Work of Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Amy from the Wellness Strategy, your host or just person talking today, and Baz is here, little Bazzy. I tried really hard to give him a little bit of motivation to stay away. We had a snack, we've had some cuddles, but ultimately I've just failed. So we are going to just cope with him being here. Hopefully he doesn't do anything crazy, but anything could happen. Despite that though, what I want to share with you today are some thoughts around autonomy and accountability and how these things go together. I've had the honor of having Dr. Paige Williams on my podcast not too long ago, and she does some wonderful work in this space around how we need to be more open to things like accountability to allow us to really thrive in our workplaces. Now, where I sit in the space of educator wellbeing, what I hear a lot of is the idea of autonomy. We want more autonomy. We should have more autonomy. I should have more control, decision making. I should be able to do what I want in some ways. Perhaps not as relaxed as that, but that definitely is an essence of what I hear a lot of. And I understand that. Now, I can appreciate that we do need certain levels of autonomy. So control, the ability to make decisions. It helps us to feel trusted. It can allow us to have more flexibility with time or to work in line with strengths, those types of things. I understand that level of autonomy that some of us crave and desire and speak. And if we go perhaps to the far end of what it may not feel like, it's this idea of micromanagement or not being able to make decisions. But there is a piece that sits within autonomy that we are missing. And I think it lies with accountability. And I want to bring to light this different perspective to help us understand why we can't just have full autonomy over everything all of the time, even though that's what is quite common to hear or to perceive. And we do have certain levels of autonomy in the realm of the work that we do as educators, definitely, but it doesn't exist all of the time in all of the spaces. And there is a reason for that. Now, before we dive into that though, what I want to share is that autonomy is necessary for us as humans. It's linked to self-determination theory. So if you're not familiar with that, it comes from the work of Deci and Ryan and self-determination theory and how that links to motivation. And there are three key pieces to self-determination theory. So one of those pieces is autonomy, one of the pieces is competence, and the other piece is relatedness. Relatedness is about our sense of belonging and connection and feeling like we are part of something, part of a tribe, part of a collective, part of something bigger than ourselves. Competence is our skill, our knowledge, our understanding, our ability to execute something. And autonomy is the capacity and ability in which we are able to execute and make decisions. It's ultimately the control we have around different things and our actions. Now, these three things combined, autonomy, relatedness, and competence, together develop self-determination theory, which really are based on three needs that all humans have. We need these things. I want to focus today just on autonomy, though, and what that is really encompasses through the lens of working in an education setting. What Deci and Ryan highlight, however, in their work of self-determination theory with autonomy is that it's not just about having the freedom to make decisions and kind of doing what we want. It's actually about understanding that our actions and decisions need to align with our values and our goals. This is what allows us to feel motivated, engaged, and fulfilled. But to do this well, we also need to take ownership of our choices in ways that are true to who we are, but also in ways that align us to the bigger piece we're working on, especially through that relatedness and community element as well. Now, I've mentioned a few times that an often overlooked but crucial aspect of autonomy is accountability. And true autonomy doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. It doesn't mean lack of responsibility. It means we need a level of accountability and responsibility to have true autonomy. So why is this? I want you to imagine for a moment that, let's take something as simple as exercise or nutrition. Most people have the autonomy to be able to make decisions around what their exercise regime might look like, around what their nutrition might look like. That means that we can control that and we can make decisions around it and take action take actions for that align with our values and our goals. However, many people don't. Many people underestimate that this is an area where autonomy exists and they can execute it, but don't do it. And the reason is because not all of us have the self-discipline, the personal accountability, the self-reliance, and the responsibility to make it happen. So we have autonomy in many areas of our life, but we don't execute that autonomy in ways that align with our values or what we truly desire, because autonomy isn't always easy. It does require that self-discipline, the responsibility, levels of accountability. And when we start to think about that, it becomes a little bit too hard, and so we just don't do it. When we think about autonomy in the workplace and through a school lens, the same thinking needs to apply. We need to understand that, yes, we can have autonomy in certain areas, but there needs to be a level of self-discipline, of responsibility, and of accountability to ensure things happen. So let's take, for example, report writing time. Reports come with a deadline. For some people, it's a surprise every year, and I don't know why, because it happens at the same time every year. But yet there are still people who are like, oh, reports, it's so stressful, or I didn't see that coming, or I'm not prepared. We need to be prepared. We know they are coming. And that's an example of autonomy where responsibility and accountability perhaps hasn't been enacted. So what I mean by that is, if we have a deadline for reports and we know they're due, we are given a significant amount of autonomy to be able to get them done by that deadline, by that due date, whatever that is. That's autonomy. Autonomy in how we go about it, when we might do it, the amount of time we give to it, whether it's short stints, long durations, whatever that looks like. We have autonomy. The accountability comes with the deadline. The accountability comes with the due date. And we need to be responsible to show that because we have autonomy, we can meet that deadline. Now, what happens when that deadline isn't met? It's an example of autonomy not being used well because we don't have the self-discipline or the responsibility or perhaps the accountability. Now, the other piece that sits within this around accountability is that we might need smaller checkpoints of accountability to ensure autonomy is actually supportive of the work that we're doing. So if we think about reports, often all we get is an end date, a due date. They need to be in by week 8, term 2, whatever that might look like. For some of us, that's really hard to grasp or really hard to understand in a way, and not understand, but bring it into our reality, because it might be 6 weeks from now or 8 weeks from when the initial conversation is had. And that can make it overwhelming for our brain because it's too far away. So when we think about accountability, what we might need are smaller checkpoints. In week 2, I want to have this done. In week 4, I want to have this done. In week 6, I have this done. In week 8, it's all finished. Without that intrinsic reflection in terms of knowing how you work and that ability to go inward, it can become difficult to have that level of self-responsibility and accountability, which means where we have autonomy, we're not necessarily executing it well. Now, if we have complete autonomy without accountability, ultimately what we can get to is chaos. What I mean by this is, if there aren't accountability measures in the work that we're doing, then how do we know if what we're doing is right? How do we know if what we're doing is working? We can have autonomy in our classroom, for example, around a new initiative we might want to try. We might have autonomy around certain texts we're using to teach certain areas of the curriculum for our students. We have autonomy around perhaps methodology. You might have the autonomy to decide whether or not you're going to run a group work in your classroom or whole class work in your classroom. Many of us have the autonomy to be able to choose what we do with our students in terms of delivering the curriculum. We don't get to decide the curriculum, so that we don't have autonomy there, but how we deliver it, we have autonomy around. This is a great example of the autonomy that exists. What we need to then know is there has to be accountability so that we can evaluate the effectiveness where autonomy exists. This is how we know whether or not what we're doing is working, whether it is effective, and how we can bring in responsibility and awareness of what we're doing with the autonomy we have, where it creates impact. We can't just have ultimate autonomy to do what we want whenever we want all of the time, because as I mentioned, it creates chaos. We need some structures. We need some parameters. We need to know within what realm we can have autonomy and what that's going to look like. But we need to measure it. We need to know what results we're looking for. We need to know whether or not the autonomy we have is actually effective. We need to know whether or not we are able to work in a way that's supportive for our students, for our colleagues, for our staff. When we can utilize autonomy and understand that accountability is part of its evaluation and effectiveness, we can then establish balance between freedom around who, what, why, when, where, how, whatever we might be able to do, layered with accountability to build a sense of trust within our teams, with our colleagues, with our wider staff, and use collaboration to get work done. Ultimately, that's what it is. Now, some of us will have examples of where we've been extended autonomy in a team, and some people have had the self-responsibility to meet deadlines or do things in a agreed manner that means trust is extended and trust is high. And some of us can think of situations where people have had autonomy in terms of how and when something needs to happen, whether it's shared planning, whether it's resourcing, whether it's organising an excursion, and it doesn't happen. And because of that, we can feel let down, we can feel disappointed. What happens then, as a result of this, is perhaps some further management, which people perceive as micromanaging. But ultimately, to have autonomy, we also have to show that we can be trusted with it, that we can do things in a timely manner, that we can have and achieve effectiveness in certain areas. Autonomy is not about doing what you want. Sometimes it'd be great if that's what it was, but it's not. Like I mentioned, we have autonomy in how we deliver the curriculum, but we don't have autonomy around what the curriculum is. That's out of our control. So autonomy lies a lot in what we can control and what we can't control. And I think in education, that's a great place to start. What do we have control in and what don't we have control with? And what we can control, where can we execute autonomy? And then what accountability do we need to bring into place so that we know it is effective for us? This is really, really important, because when we do this as leaders, we can then embrace and model what accountability looks like to support autonomy. And that's what's going to help create thriving workplaces and environments for our educators. It's not just about working in isolation either. It is about considering how we come together to do the work that we do. And I think to do that well, we really need to consider, how do we build in open communication? So when we are talking about things at a team level where people have autonomy around maybe when something is done or how something might be delivered, what communication and collaboration are we fostering so that everyone can be a part of that? Is there something we need to consider in terms of timeframes or boundaries, or being really clear on the expectations before we send everyone away to do something, so that people can take responsibility for the actions and for the choices that they make? And when we come together, we're really clear on what we were expected to do in the first place. The clear expectations has to be a huge part of where autonomy exists. Otherwise, like I mentioned, we create chaos, or people go off and do what they think is the right thing. But because expectation wasn't clear from the beginning, they might find that they've wasted their time or they haven't hit their benchmark. So autonomy is not just about doing what we want. Autonomy is about ensuring that we understand what's in our control and what's not. It's about knowing that to have autonomy, we also need accountability, because we need to know we're going to do the thing right. Otherwise, it doesn't work. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's like we all have autonomy over our nutrition and exercise, but we don't all make the decisions we want to make there because we don't have the level of self-discipline or self-responsibility to action it and make it happen. It's the same thing can happen in the workplace. But if without clear expectations, it's kind of hard to know. So autonomy is not just about freedom and free choice all of the time. It's about ensuring that what we're doing is meaningful. We want it to align with our shared values or our shared goals or our shared mission. We understand where we can execute autonomy and where we can't, and that we have accountability woven throughout, so we know whether or not we're on track, whether or not what we're doing is effective, whether or not what we're doing is working. And when we do this, we can create a more balanced and enriching work environment and personal environment. So I just want you to have a think for a moment. Where have you been craving more autonomy, and is it actually possible? And if so, where does that autonomy exist? Does it exist in how you do something? Does it exist in when you do something? Does it exist in what it looks like? It may be some of those, it may be part of those, it may be all of those, or it may not. And we need to remember we work in a system, and so therefore there are going to be things that we simply can't have autonomy over. But I am a believer that in education, we have far more autonomy than we realize. And that is exciting. All right, lovely people, I'm going to leave you there. Go and have a wonderful day, night, evening, whatever time of day it is for you. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. It's a bit of a rumbling topic, but I am willing to step into it because these are the conversations we need to have if we want schools to become great places to work, right? If you need anything, you know how to find me. If you like this, please share it. And I will see you somewhere soon. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really do hope you have enjoyed it. The information discussed today was just that, information only. It's not specific advice. If you take action following something you heard today, it's important to make sure that you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that advice be legal, financial, accounting, medical, or otherwise. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or if there's anything else I can do to support your own wellbeing and wellness journey, whether it's another topic you'd like me to discuss or whether it's support in your school, workplace, or individually. And if you do know someone who might benefit from listening to this, please remember to tell them about it, share the episode with them, or suggest my Instagram, my website, or LinkedIn where they can find out more about me and what I do. And as always, I will see you in the next episode.